I'm assuming Congo is as hot as Accra.
No, Congo is not hot. It's very normal. Like temperature is not too hot and not too cold. So it's like normal temperature. So due to the forest trees we are inside, and then it make it normal. So Ghana for me is very hot and too much pepper. The food is plenty of pepper.
We love spicy. Yes, that's true.
Plenty of pepper. Yeah, okay. But other things is fine. I appreciate it, and I'm fine. I'm good.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome. We'll kickstart the meeting in just about 3 minutes. So our meeting is just going to be casual conversation. We keep our conversations semi-formal, so that it will just flow, you know. So that's the same spirit with which you're going to have this conversation. So we'll start in the next 2 minutes. Just chill out and get it in no time. Thank you very much. Kondwani, it's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Kondwani, you're joining us from Malawi, right?
Yes, from Malawi.
Awesome. Peter, it's good to see you.
Yeah, perfect. Me too.
Yeah. You're joining us from Kenya, right?
No, Tanzania.
Tanzania, yes, Tanzania. Awesome. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the very first conversation we are having on anti-corruption by Voice One Africa. And this is the Anti-Corruption Syndicate. And it's our very first conversation. We're excited about it. And we have wonderful personnel from across the continent, from Kenya, from DR Congo, from Ghana, from various places. And you are here as well. You are part of the syndicate. So the syndicate is not necessarily the guys you find on the flyer that we circulated around, but all African youth or members or people of African descent or who share African identity, who stand against corruption and want to see the right things done in our continent. So that's we form the syndicate. And just before we commence this conversation, I'd like to say that Voice One Africa's series on anti-corruption seeks to highlight the role of youth in fighting corruption in Africa. And maybe we may first have to establish if we have corruption in our various countries. Do you have corruption in your country? That's a question you need to answer. And what forms do they take? What form does corruption in your country take? In your city, in your office? How does it materialize? And what are the enabling factors? And how do we contribute as individuals and as a collective to corruption in our various spaces? And how can we intercept and ultimately collapse the apparatus that fuels corruption? So these are the issues that we'll be discussing as the syndicate. And so basically, what are the effects of corruption on the populace? And are there any positive effects of corruption? Maybe in your country, you've identified some positive effects of corruption, and so you may want to share. There are no right or wrong answers. We just want to discuss these issues, learn from each other. Some of you are experts. I'm not an expert in corruption or anti-corruption, but we all experience it in one way or the other. And in one way or the other, we may probably have even participated in it. And also, we all also experience the effect of it in one way or the other. We see it materialize in our countries, the state of our roads, the state of our transport, our health systems, and all of that. So these are issues that we don't need to be an expert in order to speak to. And even though we appreciate the experts in the house, we'd like to, as much as possible, also hear from every member who is present. And so there'll be a time to listen to you, either speaking or typing in the chat. Yeah, that's all permitted. And basically, we are going to dissect these issues from our various country perspectives and sociocultural perspectives as well, drawing on past and present events. So without much ado, I would ask our panelists to introduce themselves. We have Bright So from Ghana, we have Damaris Aswa from Kenya, and my brother as well, Gerald from DR Congo. So let's start from the ladies first. Yes, Damaris.
Oh my goodness, really? Thank you so much. Hi everyone. My name is Damaris Aswa. I'm from Kenya. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also a community integrity building champion. I am also privileged to be sitting in the Democracy Moves Advisory Committee. And I also welcome all of you to join the Democracy Moves movement. It's just a movement like the one that we are having right now. It's just bringing youths from different regions across the world together to champion for democratic practices in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damaris. Yeah, it's great to have you. Let's have Gerald. Gerald, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much to everyone and good evening. My name is Gerard Celeb from Democratic Republic of the Congo. I am an anti-corruption activist. I have got at least 5 years of experience in the area of anti-corruption. But besides being an anti-corruption activist, I am also CEO at Disability Inclusion Group, which is a non-governmental organization promoting the inclusion of people living with disabilities. I'm from Congo, in the east part of the country. So I take a great pleasure to share my insights with all participants in this meeting. Thank you.
So much, Gerald, and it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Let's have Bright Soul. Bright.
Thank you very much.
Called. Thank you, Gerald. Bright, are you with us? I see probably Bright has dropped out. So when he rejoins us, he'll introduce himself. Okay, so we're just going to kick the conversation started. Who am I? I am Joseph Dennis Kwaku, popularly known as Dijo Kwaku. I'm the founding chair of Voice One Africa, and I'm excited to moderate this conversation. So Voice One Africa, we are a Pan-African youth movement, and we believe that the youth of Africa must connect in various ways. And to attain the Pan-African agenda, we shouldn't leave this to the politicians. We advocate and we say that founding fathers were in their youth when they pushed for independence from our colonial masters. In the same vein, when we're fighting against neocolonialism, it's the youth of Africa who must front or lead this charge. And so Voice One Africa is a Pan-African youth movement that's connecting the youth of Africa, and we are empowering youth in various avenues and various sectors, socioeconomic, also mentoring opportunities, business training opportunities, and stuff like that. And I would like to say that this meeting is being hosted by the Mandela Institute for Development Studies, Minds Africa, based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we're excited about our partnership, Voice One Africa. We're excited about our partnership with Minds Africa. And so thank you all for joining this conversation. I'm going to begin this conversation by asking our panelists, your opening remarks. When we talk about corruption and youth, corruption in Africa and youth, reflecting from your experience, from your country and your exposure, what do you have to say? What do you have to speak to with regard to corruption? How is the situation in your country? So who would like to go first? Gerald, Damaris, any of you could go. Bright isn't here, so any of you could go.
Okay, I thought of giving Gerard the first opportunity. I'm not so sure if he can hear us, but if it's okay, I can also proceed.
Yes, please.
All right. So corruption, specifically in the Kenyan context, I would say this is something that is eating up our society, and not just youth. It's something that is cutting across from youth to the elderly, and on different levels. So to me, I actually describe, or I when you talk about corruption, something that comes into my mind is just things to do with the dishonesty, mismanagement of funds, just these criminal offenses that are happening in our country. And most of the time, we tend to give a blind eye to them. I remember there is a certain author called Albert who said, this world will not be destroyed by the people who do evil, but by the people who see others do evil and they don't do anything at all to prevent it. So that is like corruption. It is happening everywhere. Things to do with dishonesty, things to do with mismanagement of funds, things to do with abuse of power. It's happening everywhere in every sector of the economy. And the funny bit is that most of us, we just look at it and we say, okay, this is someone in power, I cannot do this. This is someone beyond me, I cannot do this. This is something beyond me. But I want to tell those who are listening to me right now, I believe we all have a voice to do. We all have something to do. We all have responsibility to take to ensure that we criminalize corruption. And this has to take, it's a step that we have to take. It's a collective something. It's something that we need to take, all of us. It's not something that Damaris can do alone. It's not something that maybe you can say Gerard can do alone. But if we come together, bring our minds together, and then we mobilize people, to lobby people, to come up with groups so that we can just criminalize this corruption. Most of the time, especially for the youth, you tend, when you have meetings with youth discussing things to do with corruption, you tend to tell you matters to do with corruption are very sensitive. In Kenya, when we talk about corruption, especially to the youth, there's something that they mention, and that is security. So most of them, they say, I don't want to talk about it because if I talk about it, they'll come for me. They'll want to kill me. They'll want to maybe manipulate my family. They want to manipulate my friends. So I cannot even talk about it because it's something that is putting me at risk. But remember, if we come together, all of us, and champion for this, and that is the more reason when you talk about corruption, I always tend to tell people, can we just change the narrative? Can we talk about integrity building and not keep on I feel like we keep on glorifying the word corruption instead of us diverting or changing the narrative and just talking about integrity. Can we now change the narrative and start building integrity in the community so that it can be like a strategy to fight corruption? In Kenya, it has manifested in various places, from the education sector, agriculture sector, all those sectors in the economy. And the sad bit is people using the circumstances, the events that are happening to actually manipulate people. We all know that we are having a COVID-19 pandemic with us. Some regions, you hear that the number of transmission is going low. Others, you hear that it's coming up in huge numbers. But this has created the avenue for people to actually loot public resources. And right now in Kenya, we are actually saddened because the institute that is supposed to even supply Kenyans with medicine, cover Kenyans in terms of COVID-19, and this is KEMRI. It's the one that now it's being KEMSA is now being out there with corrupt deals that's using drugs. Maybe their procurement process is wrong. They're using just a lot of drug issues in the KEMSA, and this is the institute that we're anchoring on as Kenyans, especially during this COVID-19. So it gives us that notion that people are really looking for opportunities out here just to glorify this thing that we call corruption. And one thing you asked, how does it really manifest itself? It starts even from childhood. Remember when you're a child, I don't know if it's happening even in your countries, but if you're a child and you send your child to the market or you send someone to the shop, when you send your child to the shop, the child will ask you, what are you going to give me money to buy maybe sweet? What are you going to give me? The moment you send your child to the shop and then you give your child something like a token or something, and you tell your child, okay, take this so that you can go to the shop, that is a form of corruption. And these kids will tend to grow up knowing that I cannot help, I cannot do this unless I am compensated in one way or the other. And this keeps on growing. So we end up accusing the higher people in the higher ladder, and then we forget that these things are even starting from the lower ladder, even at the parental, even at home, when we have family. Yes.
Wow. Damaris, this is startling. I mean, for me, I'm not an expert. I indicated by saying I'm not an expert in the subject. But I mean, what you're saying now It's really interesting, saying that it begins from childhood. Like if you incentivize a child to do something in one way or the other, you are you are you are sensitizing the child towards corruption or towards being corrupt. Oh wow.
Yes,
Amazing.
and I don't know
It's getting...
I don't know if it's happening in your country, but
Oh
I
no,
know
it happens here. It happens
Yes.
in Ghana. And
yeah,
I'm sure
and you know,
probably our colleagues from other countries could attest to that as well.
yes, yes. So you see, it
Let's-
starts from early childhood, and then it grows and magnifies into a big thing. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from I think Bright is here. Bright, yeah. So if you could introduce yourself briefly and then share your thoughts, your opening thoughts on corruption. In fact, I think we didn't define corruption. Damaris has helped us by even shedding light on how it begins. So Bright, you can even touch a bit on it from your experience after introducing yourself, your thoughts on corruption, anti-corruption, and how it's materializing in our spaces, and how is the situation in Ghana. And I know you have traveled across Africa. You keep traveling several countries. And so maybe you have some perspective to share across the continent. So Bright, if you can. Did we lose Bright again? Okay, I think we've lost Bright again. Network. Please bear with us. Bright is in. It's not in Accra. I think it's having a challenge with internet. Yeah, so I'll shift the same questions to Gerald. Gerald, if you can take over, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the floor. First of all, I'll be apologizing for my internet connection. Maybe some people will not hear me well, but I will do my best so that everyone can catch me. Okay.
Okay.
About corruption in DR Congo, this is a very common situation. Everywhere people are talking about corruption. And corruption is not only about money, as some people can think, because too many citizens, Congolese citizens, are still ignorant about the matter. They don't know how to distinguish corruption with the other problems that they face. So as this is a general case, I will try to tell people that corruption is anything that you can do and that is not related to your right. You want to get something, but this is not about the right. You have to get it, okay? And most of the people who use this way are the people in power. Those people who has power, most of the time they try to use this way just to get money, just to get some rights, and etc. So this practice is done by people who want to get things easily, and these people are unlawful. They are unlawful because corruption is something which is prohibited by the law. And every country has got its law because it's the law which determines the types and kinds of corruption. Because what can be corruption in Congo is not necessarily corruption in Ghana, is not necessarily corruption in another country of Africa. So we should be aware of that. But in all cases, corruption is not good. And as Damaris has told us, that's true. Corruption starts from childhood. From childhood, when your parents send you somewhere and you are trying to lie, to say, no, my mother or my father gave me some money and I'll be using this money to do other things different from what you have been told. That is corruption. When you steal money from your parents, that's corruption. When you tried to bribe a teacher at school, when a teacher is trying to urge you to give them some money so that they can give you some grades, that is corruption. So corruption has got different forms, and we are trying to fight all of those kinds of forms by using different approaches. Okay, one of the most effective approach that I do consider is integrity, it is a community integrity building. That is a very successful approach that can help citizens to fight corruption in their countries. Okay, what is the community integrity building approach? This approach takes its roots in the word integrity itself. It means that people accept corruption because they are not, they don't have integrity. They don't have honesty. They are not honest. And this culture of being honest is something which should be built in everyone's mind. Everyone should know that no, corruption is like poison. It's like a poison. When you give poison to a child or a friend or a parent, then you kill that one. So that is how corruption is. Everyone should fight against corruption because corruption is not a good practice. So in Congo, there are some movements, some non-governmental organizations, and the government itself is trying to fight corruption because they have found that corruption is a very bad gun that politicians and other authorities, so that they can get riches, they can get wealth illegally in ways that are not legal. So corruption is a common problem in Africa, and Congo is among the countries where corruption is, as you know, the context in countries where there is a war, where people are just fighting, there are some social conflicts. Corruption is at a high level. It's a very high level. And we as citizens, we as anti-corruption activists, we must work hard to find ways to fight all root causes of corruptions. Root causes, starting by leadership. That is one of the most ways people can fight corruption in their countries. Myself, I think that if we can think about leadership, how to have honest leaders in our countries, how we can build leaders, and this good system is to start with the youth, as we are. Youth, because the next generation, people will help the Africa, who will help their countries. We must build another way of thinking, how people must think. They must understand the consequences, the bad consequences of corruption, and how they have to fight it. Okay? So when we have got good leaders, I think that corruption will take an end in our continent. Thank you so very much.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I like how you brought out these issues about community integrity building and how the community can actually fight corruption if we are aware of how corruption is materializing. And you spoke about people or not the absence of integrity and honesty. And in our countries, you also highlighted some of the enabling factors. You spoke about conflicts, and when there are wars and there's conflict, it kind of creates opportunity for corruption to thrive. And what I'm thinking is we want to make this conversation as practical and as relatable as possible. How, in our own ways, for example, in Ghana, I'm sure there are some people from Ghana here. You realize that in Ghana, we don't have, currently we don't have, and we've not had any conflicts ongoing for some time, for a long time, in fact. I think we've been enjoying peace for several decades now. But we still have corruption here, and it's rife. It's something that is troubling, right? And when we I think what I'm trying to say is you spoke about the issue of integrity and honesty. in the lives of the populace, that it's absent. But what I also find is that for people, for the average person to survive in Africa, in our cities, the person in one way or the other must find a way of earning. And in some ways, the ways of earning or the ways of making income has to circumvent the law. You spoke about the law of a country defining what is corrupt and what is not corrupt. And sometimes the leaders of these countries and the laws within the state are positioned in such a way that by default, people would have to circumvent the law in order to survive. And in so doing, practice corruption. For that's a form of corruption, bribery, you know. So we, in one way or the other, the ways to survive in our city we become forced, or the average person, the urban poor, has become forced in one way or the other to commit, to be corrupt, to engage in some corrupt actions in order to survive in our cities. This is something I've heard when I shared this. I invited people. We had people send in comments and stuff. This is one thing that people were saying, and I would like to hear. This is an open conversation, and Bright is not here. I'd like to hear if you have any questions, any contributions. You can put them in the chat. We see there are lots of stuff in the chat. I'd like to, so let's think through this. I'd like to say the severance of economic hardship. This is coming from Gilbert. It says the severance of economic hardship in Africa has obviously forced many people to engage in corrupt practices. How do we deal with that? Exactly what I was saying. Thanks, Gilbert. You know, so the economic hardship in Africa has forced many people to engage in corrupt practices. You know, and the other thing is that because our laws are ambiguous, some of the laws are hidden from the people. You know, so the state officials tell you what is right and what is not right. In a way, they kind of, it helps because the laws are ambiguous. It helps, or it facilitates corruption in terms of state officials having the upper hand. Now, Trey says the panelists have raised eye-opening realities in addition to fighting the political aspect of corruption. We must fight it domestically as well. Does it mean to tackle corruption, we must first start from our homes, or we can attack it from all sides simultaneously? Lastly, how can we sensitize a population obsessed with only the political aspect of corruption with no knowledge that it is a spectrum? Okay. Wow. All right, so these are some deep questions coming in. Would we like to, Damaris, would you want to respond to any of these issues that I've done? Then afterwards, we'll have Gerald also share some thoughts. And from there, I would like to open the floor. We'll also hear from our participants. Yeah, Damaris, if you'd like to.
Yes, I was just going through the charts to read the questions once again.
Yeah, these are deep questions, deep questions. So the first one came from Gilbert, who was he summarized what I was saying in a very nice way. He says that the severance of economic hardship in Africa has obviously forced many people to engage in corrupt practices. How do we deal with that? And I mean, for me, what pains me a lot is that our leaders do not experience, they are so detached from the realities of the average person in the city. So they don't kind of feel the things that the populace feels. So when they are making the laws, these laws are abstract laws that do not really make sense to the average person. You know, so yeah, Damaris, please.
Yes, so allow me to respond to that. So I'll start by saying, issues to do with the economy are really vital and very sensitive. And, this brings in, I want to believe the person who was asking that question brings in the element of unemployment, which now puts these people under the vulnerability cap, where now they can be used to do the corrupt deals. It's really sad it's happening. But again, this brings us back to the drawing board, the leaders that we choose to bring on board. Most people take elections, I don't know, they just take it like it's a normal thing. And the sad bit is that majority of us don't even bother to vote. And those of us who even vote, they vote on basis of race, or maybe they're just sycophant about someone, and they end up electing someone who won't even be able to support them in any way. And that is where now the problem comes in. We vote in bad leaders, and these leaders, they don't even have the interest of the community members, the citizens at heart. And they end up not even doing anything because they were driven by their selfish ambitions in order to be on the seat. So it takes us to who are these leaders we are choosing to be on the seats. And like in Kenya, we even have devolution. It makes matters worse because now that it has been devolved, the functions have been devolved up to the county levels and even the ward levels, then that means the level of corruption has also magnified itself and even ventured into the local grassroots communities. And people are really grabbing opportunities as they want, the little they get, just to get money for their selfish gains. Because, some of them were not even elected, they were just nominated. And because the reasons of being nominated is because they were allies to a particular political party that was elected, and that is the major bit of sad bit of it. So the leaders that we bring on board. The second bit is that we have civil society organizations that are operating in our communities, and this civil society they even have economic empowerment programs. You hear that we have civil societies who are receiving huge grants from donors to implement economic empowerment programs in our communities, income generating activities. But when you question about the impact, the outcome, most of them, they end to do this project. They do them because they just want to tick boxes that we've been able to sensitize 10 or let's say 10 groups in the community. But when you ask them, what is the outcome of you sensitizing or maybe training these community members in the community? They don't even tell you. The only ending point for them is that they did that activity and they were able to report to the donor that they trained these people, and they even have nice photos. The photos are showing that they even have t-shirts, they've been trained. This is really, really sad because there's nothing happening on the ground. People are really suffering, but these people are using us in the community. And that's the more reason the issue of the economic issue will really continue to be the discussion if all of us, I mentioned about collaborative engagement, if all of us don't take it up on ourselves, now to start questioning these people, to have the voices to hold these duty bearers and right holders accountable. We need to build our voices around these issues and tell them, okay, you are supposed to, as a leader, you are supposed to do A, B, C, D. What have you done? You've done this to this level. What is hindering you from doing this? These civil society organizations that are masquerading out here as if they're helping the communities and they're not helping the communities. Community members need to stand up and voice out and tell them, okay, you came, trained us, but there's no outcome. You've not even bothered to go beyond the outputs element. You don't even bother. Then why are you masquerading yourself as you're helping the society and you're not even helping the society? Because if we keep building a blind eye on this, then the issue of corruption will be something that we'll be talking about every time and then. Another thing is youth. Majority of youth, when you're applying for employment, I don't know if it's happening in other countries. You just graduated last year, and here you're being asked 15 years of experience. Where are you going to get those 15 years of experience in order for you to get a job? And these youth are really vulnerable. They have the skills, they have the knowledge, they've been trained. They've gone through the academic calendars and they know all these skills from their lecturers. But you're telling them, give me 15 years of experience. Where do you want them to get it? And then when they start engaging in these corrupt issues, whatever, deals being used by these powerful people to do their corrupt issues, now we start blaming them. We are blaming them and we're not even empowering them. We're not giving them the chance to explore their potential in life, and that's why even the more reason powerful people are using them. And even during elections, they just give them $5, $10, and they start rioting everywhere because they're vulnerable, So these issues have to be looked at from a dynamic point of view. From all stakeholders, we have a role, even us as youth, we really have in fact, for youth, we have numbers. All of us, we have youth have numbers. I think we make up a bigger percentage of the population. So if we start voicing out and lobbying, then we can do something. And majority of the youth, they're very active on social media platforms. So you can imagine if all of us start causing, just doing advocacy on our social media platforms on these matters, how will it go? There is something, I believe we can do something with our numbers that we have as youth to change the narrative that, that corruption is associated with the economy, all those things that are just coming up. We have a role to play in all these things.
What you're saying, it's amazing. You've even started highlighting some of the ways we can go around this. And it's amazing. Speaking about how the youth, like you mentioned, we have numbers. I think so far in Africa, more than 60% of the population is youth, so that's a significant, demographic. So if we are saying advocacy on social media platforms on this subject, or even shaming, naming and shaming and stuff like that, I feel that some of these ways could also help us fight in one way or the other. So thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. I think Gerard,
there's something that I was forgetting, and I feel it's very important for us to know.
Yeah.
The thing is that corruption scandals that come on board, and we see them maybe in social media, we see them for 1 month and then they vanish. For the common citizen, we'll think that this issue has ended. But I want to assure you, corrupt scandals, they don't easily end. They might just pause all from the social media platforms and all those platforms. But in real sense, these things, they don't end. It's not easy for someone to end these corruption scandals. And that's why you might see those people who are being accused or criminalized on corruption issues, they end up being poor. Because why? Because majority of them, when they go to court, they will start bribing, because that is their nature. They love bribing. So they will end up bribing the court in order to give them allowance of a certain period of time. 5 years, someone else will come on the judgment seat. So someone totally different. They don't know this person. Again, because their culture is to bribe, they will bribe that person, that judge, to extend the period. So let me ask you, how long will you continue to bribe, and how much will you use to bribe these judges and your lawyers in order to keep you just safe under the safe cap that you're telling us that you want to be safe to prolong your period? At the end of it all, you see them, they become very poor. And what am I saying is that there is no shortcut. Because corruption is a shortcut. There is no shortcut. It's not the best way to follow, because when these scandals come and touch you, my friend, you will pay. And the price for paying for corruption scandals is very huge. And sometimes you don't see them on social media platforms, but just go through all the cases that started. They might take 10 years, 20 years. They might follow you for 30 years, but it will not end easily. That's something I wanted to point out.
Thank you so much, Damaris, for pointing these thoughts, sharing these insightful thoughts. So we have Gerald and Bright are having challenges with their internet. We have wonderful members who are here, the panelists, and I'm going to open the floor. We have some questions here. Let me just read a few of them. And then, Bright is here. Okay, so Bright, you're welcome. Just introduce yourself briefly, and then you begin by touching on some of the questions. You can touch on the question by Naache. So Bright, yes, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bright. So I work for the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. I work there as the head of programs.
Okay, awesome.
Right. Anti-Corruption Coalition is a hybrid entity. In other words, we are made up of. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
All right.
I was wondering if you would like to turn off your camera since the network is a bit poor.
Done.
Thank you.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, we can hear you
the
clearly
Anti-Corruption Coalition is a coalition of 13 institutions. Some of the institutions are from the private sector, some are from the government sector, and some are. So we are a hybrid entity. Before I turn my attention to the questions, let me probably just make a few remarks. Corruption is nature. As there are people greedy, there will be corruption. So if you cannot take away that nature in human beings, the greed element, you cannot completely take away corruption. And corruption is everywhere. It's not just on our continent, it's also on our continent as well. The reason why it's such a massive problem in our continent is that it affects even access issues, and that's the keyword, access. People need to get a job, they need to get education, they need to get healthcare, they need to get essentials of life. Corruption stands in their way. And that's the difference we find in our part of the world and what you tend to find in the more developed countries. In those parts, there is still these issues, but they are not quite pervasive, at least at the access stage, or prevalent at the access stage, the way they work. And I don't do just corruption in Ghana. I have projects in Sierra Leone, projects in Benin. I've done other African countries, and stories are not too different. So that's one thing we've got to know. Now, there are different forms of corruption. I saw a question from Kondrani, who said basically is asking if a lady needs to get a job. And this is a very familiar story. It's a real one as well. I've had experiences there. Ladies to be telling their stories. Who needs to get a job and start asking basically to sleep with the boss to get a job? Well, if you look at it from the part of the boss, this somebody is trying to extort sex from the lady. So it's extortion. It's a form of corruption before he gives her a job. And of course, I'm also aware the other ladies who are also willing and are the first ones to use their bodies. Dennis, I remember from our days studying as psychology students, some ladies tell us, you know, they're going to use their bodies to get the grades, and we should continue learning. They will get grade A's. Now, a form like that is more something in kind that is used to basically get what they want. So that's bribery. Now, we're talking about the access issues. And since this is a youth platform, I have to say and go direct and say the biggest thing affecting you is unemployment. I think this goes without saying, treason. But one of the biggest also why people are not getting employment has to do with this issue. But I should say, people are not getting employment on merit. The people getting employment, I refer to my own country, Ghana. If you are going for a job, particularly in the public service, your chances of getting the job are around 1%. It's become a lot more prominent, particularly in the last 4 years. For every job, and most jobs in the public service, you probably need a bribe of around $500 to get a job. And it's got to the extent where everything is so monetized that even if your father was the head of the organization, he can probably still not get you a job, because the list from the politicians, what we typically call list, which in most institutions will probably be about 10%, at most 20% of the recruitment, is now 99% of that recruitment. And that list can be so long in comparison to the number that need to be recruited, that even who work cannot get other people in. And all these people now are taking money, the sum I mentioned, before they get to, you know, recruit you. And places where there is expected, or institution offers a lot of, the salary is very good, you're going to pay something between say something between 2,000 and 3,500 US dollars to go to those jobs. And the sad part is that as long as people are willing to pay and they're able to pay, they're no longer even looking at qualification. They're not looking at even simple things like passing a physical test. So, for example of an institution that recently recruited 329 people, only one person came on merit. The rest had all paid money to go. And this was a report that was made and verified. And indeed, those who paid money, most of them had failed the physical test. They had failed the aptitude test as well, but because they paid money, they were allowed, as it were, to go in. You ask yourself, how did we get here? Some years ago, protocol list has always been there, like I said, but it's been 10, 20%. It's because sanctions have not worked when it comes to corruption issues. And initially, you only had the politicians involved in it. And it doesn't really monetize. Politician gets jobs for people in order to win support and get re-elected in his or her constituency or get re-elected for a national election position. Now, there are so many people, and that's another pattern. Since we are talking about drivers, the huge unemployment has also been a driver because you can still charge people, still look like you are working in terms of getting people, and therefore still hoping to win an election. Back to what I was saying. So politicians were dabbling in this, but not so much the civil servants. But this watch for years. Politicians come and make so much money against them, while they relied on meager pensions. So at some point in time, somebody's going to ask, what's the downside for doing this? I'm not going to get caught. Chances are very small. So I might as well also dabble in it and make some money for myself. And once one person starts, it began to be, as it were, reinforced, because if those 3 or 4 people were not caught, no sanction for them, why not? The rest of us should also be able to busily engage it.
Yeah, right. I mean, these are really insightful things you've highlighted. If you've given us some figures, to reflect on. These are deep. Like you're saying, if the sanctions aren't working, then everybody can as well just go on and do what they want. And that's been the situation, And I believe that it's one of the drivers, like you're saying, influencing and fueling the corruption that we see and find in our countries. Let's look at the questions. I saw your hand. Okay, I saw a hand, but it looks like it's been lowered. Yeah,
it was my hand. I don't know if I could speak.
Yes, so please introduce yourself, the country you're speaking from, and then you can share your perspective.
Okay, perfect. My name is Diveshni Mariah. I am from South Africa. And in response to, to contribute to the dialogue, I think what we need to realize and understand that corruption starts from the degeneration of human values. I think that's where it stems from. And I like the examples that the speakers have used with regards to as simple as, just putting somebody in place of employment that does not fit their job description or does not have the qualification. And it starts as small as that. And the reality for our youth is that a lot of those that are in power, whether it is politicians, whether it's corporates, etc., the realization is that we are all setting these kind of examples for the future generation. And the other point I'd like to make is with regards to where it starts from. It definitely starts from greed and power. And the realization of where it leads or ends up is that we are literally stealing money from our vulnerable communities, because that is the cycle of corruption, because enough would never be enough. And, you may not realize it, but you're not stealing when you steal from your company, you're not stealing from your company or the government, etc. The realization is that you're stealing from tax-paying individuals. And that is the reality of corruption. And it's the degeneration of our communities, our society, and our country holistically, and the world. Because power and greed will destroy you. As the speaker said, one before me, she said, we do not realize the power we have in that collective as individuals. You're talking about 60% of a country's population being youth. Imagine that power that we have as a collective if we just say, enough is enough. And the reality is that the corrupt people that are doing corruption, they really think that communities and people are that stupid that we do not realize what they're doing, because we just accept. In South Africa, you realize with regards to the Zondo Commission, everything is so real and it's out there. But yet they still think that they can do this over and over and over again and keep destroying the fiber of our being and our country. We are citizens of this country. And and in terms of a solution, I think it would need to start at levels of being able to, we have whistleblowers. And, the reality is they really fear for their lives. But I think we need to understand the power that we have to say enough is enough. To the powers that be, but enough is enough. We cannot allow people to destroy our countries, destroy our future generation with this kind of immoral behavior. We can't. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Davashni. I mean, this spot on. Like you mentioned, the fact that there are whistleblowers who fear for their lives, and I think it's one of the things. So how I think as subsequent conversations, we would have to figure out how we can, as youth, create a kind of a force that not an individual cannot be targeted when we are exposing corrupt activities, or when we are building an integrity spirit, or an ethos or a spirit of integrity among youth to stand against acts of corruption and the such actions. So we would have to continue with this conversation again. If you would like to share any thoughts, please, you can lift up your hands. You'll be asked to speak. I want to read some of the comments we have here. We have a comment from Natre. She says that the panelists have raised eye-opening realities. In addition to fighting the political aspects of corruption, we must fight it domestically as well. Does it mean to tackle corruption, we must first start from our homes, or we can attack it from all sides simultaneously? Lastly, how can we sensitize a population obsessed with only the political aspect of corruption, with no knowledge that it's a spectrum? I think this is a very good question, because we keep talking about the politicians, right, and how they are destroying our countries and stuff like that. So what Natre has raised is an important one. And then we also have Akosia. Akosia is saying that, hi, I am Akosia Kesewa from Ghana. I would like to acknowledge how insightful this discussion has been. Ensuing this, I would like to find out how an individual will firmly stand and get his or her quota towards the fight of institutional corruption recognized and accepted for adoption, when the entire institutional structure is against such positive efforts towards the fight of corruption. I would be very appreciative if this could be looked at for me, please. So I think what Akosia is saying is, how can, if you're in an institution and there are corrupt activities and actions going on, and you're standing against it, how can you garner support to be able to fight against that setup within your institution? So this is talking about institutional corruption. So I would open the floor. We're in this brainstorming session and thinking session, so it's not going to be just for the panelists. I see Chris, I see your hands. Please, you can unmute yourself and speak. You can address any of these questions as well. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the floor. I'll start first by congratulate the people who organized the meeting, and then we enjoy it very, very well. Thank you first. Can you hear me, I think?
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so the things I want to address is that the panelists, they already go through the context of the corruption, and it's very fine as they go. The situation look the same in the whole Africa. So now the things I'm going to make maybe in a point, it comes for the role of youth, maybe some consequences of corruption to the economics and the way it comes from. That the things is that I think that the consequences for this corruption everywhere is the inequality. It creates inequality, and many panelists, they really say it, because that corruption incited to inequality between people who are not able to do it and those who are doing it, and that leads exactly to a higher poverty among people. Other things I have to take in account is, I have to make on a point is to do the level of to analyze the corruption. I think for me, it's on two levels. The first level is like macroeconomics, and the other is on micro level. On micro level, it comes now how inside the households, how people they manage which case, which factor they make, they play on it, so then they can reduce it. And that comes where Saleh was saying about the leadership, how people are sensitive on leadership to stop or to reduce, because it's very difficult to stop exactly the level of corruption, but the people can try to reduce it. That is on level micro. But now it comes for level, macro level, where it now requires the policies, which governance policies, how the governments make their policies, so then they can bring people to stop, to reduce the corruption. What I mean is that is the citizen, they agree that once they don't corrupt, if they are doing well, the revenue of if sector without any corruption are affected to their welfare, because that's the problem also. When people, citizens, they think now that taking off corruption and not doing it anymore, not gaining things, because it affected negatively the growth of economics. But if in the country there is no policy of distribution of the level of growth, I think that can lead to a higher level of corruption. Now the things maybe I have to, with which I want to conclude, is that the role of youth. I know that it's as youth, I think we are require many things. First, that we are victim of the corruption, and we are also supposed to be the factor to stop it. I don't know if you get the point. How
Yes.
the whole. So we are first victims. That means context in whole Africa don't give youth opportunity to prove why they do. Because if you can take an account of they argue from participants based on the unemployment, how to access on jobs, those different creature will limited youth to prove how they are capable, and that's make to be victim. But now, how by being victim, how youth are going to solve, they can intervene on that. I think that it comes on now those things like platform we are organizing, like here. If I think in other level where each countries can have association, youth association, and to stand up to address their issues, because that is concern. Because the problem is that if you are youth, the cycle is like once you reach, you want to go beyond those creatures, you enter the system of corruption. The things you have to know is that once you are in the system, it's not very easy to go out of the system. I don't know if you get the point. Due to the number of youth who are in the system, I think that the advice is that to reduce it, it comes to at our own youth to see how to organize those associations during country to explain our issues, and maybe once we reach that, to be able to take all those things in account. I think that is the point I have to do. My colleagues already say about my countries, and I think it's fine. It's okay.
Thank you very much, Chris. Chris is joining us from DR Congo. I mean, he's from DR Congo, but currently in Accra, Ghana, studying economics at the University of Ghana. He introduced himself earlier. Thank you, Chris. So well said. There's need for organizing. The youth, we need to organize. And aside just speaking against it, we need to form these organizations to empower each other. Yeah, so well said. Nada Tando, Nada, if you please. So let's keep our comments brief so that we can have more people sharing thoughts. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay,
Nada.
thank you, sir. In my opinion, I think that we can individually fight the corruption in our own small way. For instance, if you're in an organization, you try as much as possible to follow procedures. When it comes to people actually not following procedures or not adhering to what they are supposed to do, I believe that some organizations have suggestion boxes. These are ways of reporting these things, maybe, should I say, actions that are not according to procedure. So you report them, you put them in these suggestion boxes. Some organizations have ethic officers, and these ethic officers are there to be informed as to whatever that is going on, any misappropriation or whatever wrong thing that is going on. These officers are there to make sure that the right thing is done. So these officers, for instance, in Ghana, I think that we are fortunate that we have the National Anti-Corruption Strategy and Plan, where I think I heard someone say that it's at the national, regional, district levels. At the same time, it involves the public, private sectors, and the CSOs. So all these organizations, or should I say, these sectors are mandated to have ethics officers who have been trained to know what to do and how to report these should I say anomalies. Yes. Aside that, to when it comes to, aside even the corruption, we ourselves, when it comes to going to, you are supposed to, for instance, you know that you are supposed to go to work early. Maybe you are supposed to report at 8 o'clock. These are all things that can lead to corruption. Because, for instance, you have a time you're supposed to report at 8 o'clock, and then you get to work probably 8:30, 9:30, and then you write in the book, registration book, 7 a.m. Or you tell the person who is supposed to check you, probably the security person who is supposed to make sure that you write the right time, or you just give him some 10 CDs. Oh, this is what I have. Take this so that you cover you up and all. So at every point in time, as individuals, I think that we shouldn't only look at the politicians, we shouldn't only look at those in authority, but we ourselves as individuals, how do we in our own small way fight it? And these are some few examples. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nada. I think your contribution kind of addresses or speaks to Akosia's question. Akosia, I see you are still around. You were interested in institutional corruption. I don't know if you would like to unmute yourself, Akosia, and share some thoughts. Did this help?
Yes, please. I think briefly she has touched on every bit of it. So she's trying to prompt me to the fact that it's very needful when you make the authorities aware that perhaps there are certain activities that are against the actual organizational rules or perhaps institutional rules that lead to corruption, and then it would be taken up from there. So I think in summary, I could get her clearly, and I've also taken something out of that. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm reading from the comments. Echo Krent says that, well, firstly, charity begins at home. This statement goes further than appears. We are not perfect, but a person's character starts developing from things they were exposed to during childhood. Yeah, I see a hand. Gina, if you'd like to go. We're going to end 5:30, so we have just about 15 minutes to go. So Gina, yeah, 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is. Hi, can you hear me?
Can, yes, we can.
So I just want to add a bit to what everyone has been saying about how to tackle corruption. I also think that basically I can speak for my country, because which is Ghana. I also realize that Ghana, usually the public do not have access to information, like the right to information, the right to know something like what is your right. So for instance, if I go to a ministry, or if I'm going to apply for a job, or if I go to a particular office and I meet an individual who is supposed to assist me, and the individual doesn't assist me, what can I do? Who can I report to? I mean, what's my right? If you meet the police officer and then the police officer is telling you something, I mean, access to the information as to what also is my right, I think usually we don't have, because if you're empowered with like the power to have information. Everybody knows that if I do this, this person has access to this information, that this can happen to me. I don't know if I'm making sense. So it looks like everything is bleak. Nobody knows what can happen to this person, or where this person's rights end, or where this person has an obligation towards a consumer, a customer, something like that. So it makes everything like, if you go and then you even, this is your right to access this information, or your right for the person to do this for you or do that for you. You don't know it. So it's like, okay, if you don't give me this amount of money, I can help you. So I think this is also an issue.
You're saying that because the laws are not, they are not transparent. Like there's no transparency. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for sharing these thoughts. We have just some few minutes. If you check the chat box, I've shared a link. You can be part of Voice One Africa, and you can join the syndicates, the Anti-Corruption Syndicate. We plan to have these conversations every 3 weeks, or probably once a month. We'll decide in a WhatsApp group. So if you want to be part of us, you can just join, and then we'll have this discussion and decide how often we'll have this conversation going forward. This is the very first conversation. We're going to end in just about 15 minutes. Whilst we're running off, would like to hear from the panelists. Bright is back, so let's have him let's hear his thoughts before he drops out again. Any closing thoughts, anything you would like to share?
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. Let me just also quickly add that one of the failures for us has been our anti-corruption institutions, particularly those mandated with the investigations, with receiving complaints, investigating, and basically prosecuting. Working the sector, so many examples. Maybe the most recent one, I should just cite that. So we had officials who auctioned properties of the Ministry of Health and basically produced or brought in only about 1/3 of the money. Now, when they were indicted in the Auditor General's report, and this matter was referred to IOCO, they are telling us they cannot locate these officers and they cannot locate the institutions they work for. Similar, another case has been storekeepers who embezzled almost more than $1 million Ghana cedi. So dollar equivalent should be somewhere around 95, 97,000 US dollars. And again, the response I got from you, because I wrote personally to them following up on the issue, was that one of them had gone on retirement and since 2014, and they are unable to trace it. But none of those response satisfactory, because trust me, had this particular officer threatened the life of the president, I bet you they'll find the person, regardless how long he's been off the grid. So I feel like they're not doing enough. And also, I think it was Ada who mentioned something like the NACAP, the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan. I am part of the monitoring committee. Every time I go for meetings, I'm extremely angry because we seem to be measuring our success by the number of institutions that are reporting. So at the output level, rather than what have they achieved with the activities they've done, what are the outcomes, and assessing those outcomes and see what is not working, what we need to do better, and that's not happening. That's what I mean when I say that corruption institutions are really not helping. But let me also look at the other side of things where we are talking about what are the solutions to, these issues. Yeah. To be honest, I'd almost given up on adults and corruption. And one of the areas I'm most focused on is how can we, as it were, preserve the youth from corruption. So since 2018, I've been working with the University of Ghana, with KNUST, with UDS. The University of Ghana has been the one that has been sustained to do anti-corruption education, particularly for their student leaders, new elected student leaders. In fact, I have the program tomorrow at the University of Ghana CD conference room, where I'll be again talking to the elected new student leaders. Their whole idea is to expose them to all the forms of corruption there is. Because people are still not aware of things like corruption, things like conflict of interest, abuse of discretion. People do not understand it, so they are not aware these are corruption. And give them the chance also to explain to them that, look, 99% of the time you get away with it. It's only 1% of the time that you'll be caught. But the 1% of the time, you have no idea when that is going to happen. So, basically try to, and also explain to them good values like participation, like transparency, like accountability, what we expect from them as student leaders. So I do this to make it more sustainable by developing a virtual platform, which the Dean of Students has promised us that the first video is done. When it's all done, they'll make it a prerequisite for all students who want to put positions in the university to take this course, pass it, show evidence of passing the course before they can, as it were, go for vetting. So we are making some progress in terms of putting some institutional things in place. So my target really has been the young leaders, people who are now coming to the scene, people who in a few years' time will probably be in mainstream leadership position across the country, to expose them to corruption issues. And again, what are the consequences for them as well? Because even on campus these days, you don't get away with corruption the way we used to do in our time, because there are so many news outlets, and once your name, one article is published about you, even internships, I Google the name of my prospective intern, I see an article like that about you. Of course, there's no you are coming. So we also feel people have to know that although this may look like a safe thing to do, there are consequences if things do not go well for you. The 1% is real and can happen to you at any time. Now, regarding the issue of youth unemployment, like I said, people simply to have a 1% chance of getting a public job in Ghana right now. That's what I put it. And it is very difficult for me being employed to tell somebody or a youth, I say, do not pay the bribe to get a job. Because the reality is that as Maslow puts it, is a basic need. It comes before issues of transparency, accountability, and honesty and integrity, or at the second level of that pyramid. But I'll plead, because I'm pretty sure most of the youth on this platform right now are either employed or at least they are in positions where they can have these discussions, just as Nada and other Akosia and Co. Sort of beseech us that, look, it all starts with us and how we behave also in those offices. If we take advantage of opportunities to be corrupt, all we are doing is enabling this particular system. But if we take a stand, we in our own way, we are reversing a trend that's almost become a culture in Ghana. So we cannot do something about it. When the opportunity presents, we should make a stand and behave the way we expect our leaders to behave. And I'm sure at some point in time, we would also become a critical mass of people that can push for change. Looking at our time, and others can also be a contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bright. I think that's very insightful. Behave the way we expect our leaders to behave. I think that's a puncher, right? So Damaris, I'm coming to you now. Share your closing thoughts, your closing remarks. Yeah. This is not the end of the conversation. This is actually the beginning of the conversation. Please, I'm reminding everyone, we have our link in the chat. You are part of the syndicate. So just hit on the link and join Voice One Africa. You join the syndicate, and then you'll be part of the subsequent conversations, stuff like that. We keep pushing, we keep moving. Thank you, Damaris. Please go ahead.
Okay, so my last parting shots will be, let us work together to open up the civic participation spaces. Let us make them safe enough for people to be able to open up and air their concerns. And then let us also collaboratively engage to make sure that we come up with amicable and shared solutions to the issues that are revolving around us. And in the institutions, as one of the members has just mentioned, kindly let us also ensure that we take part in, I always understand that we have strategic plans that normally take place 5 years or after 10 years, depending with the organizations. So kindly let us ensure that we also take part in being part of the strategic plans that are being made in our organizations, so that we can have the input about accountability and integrity matters being engulfed in those strategic plans that we put in our individual organizations. And as I already mentioned, let us please be active in ensuring that we engage in our civic spaces. So, we normally have policymakers and they always come down to our grassroots level to consult us. So please let us also come out in huge numbers, because our voice matters. And the moment we distance ourselves from these spaces, the moment now they will use these opportunities to just make their own decisions or policies that don't even favor the common citizens. So kindly let us use these spaces to ensure that our voices are also heard. And I'll also, lastly, I'll be doing justice if I don't mention an entity in Kenya which has really and is really trying to do its best to ensure that it inculcates integrity values in the society. And this is Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of Kenya. So this is a commission that is really working to ensure that it instills or inculcates integrity values in the society. And I know one of the strategic plan, as in strategy that they've been putting in place, is establishing integrity clubs in schools, and they do this from primary to tertiary level of education. And I've been privileged to be part of those people who are forming these integrity clubs in the societies, in the communities, in the schools, and we've even gone a notch higher to form these clubs at community level, because we understand issues to do with the integrity, accountability, transparency. You know, they cut across all sectors in our communities, and they're really vital. So we established these integrity clubs in schools, and we also established these clubs at the community level. So I want to say Kenya has and is making some strides that are really commendable in the integrity space by ensuring that we form these integrity clubs in the communities and in schools. And also we have Transparency International, which is also really supporting such initiatives, and also Accountability Lab Global, Integrity Action, Kesho Kenya, and all those stakeholders who are coming together, including individual people and all those grassroots community. You know, I'm a grassroots community activist, I will say that. So anytime I'm talking, I always want to base my facts on the grassroots community level. So my parting shot is just to kindly request you to just take part in building open and civic spaces. Please let us open them up and let them be safe enough for people to open up the issues, and also let us also engage in these policy making decisions that are happening in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damaris. I think it's well said. You know, open up the civic participation spaces. I'm reading some comments from our chat. We have Frankie Luelela says, greetings from the African Ombudsman Research Center. So Frankie would like to collaborate with the center. So get in touch, and then for subsequent conversations, we can even host you guys. Language Telani, that's Linky from LRF in South Africa, specifically in Mpumalanga, says that what an eye-opening conversation. For me, it all boils down to integrity, which I had defined simply as doing the right thing, especially when no one is watching. And most of us struggle with that, which then leads to corruption and or bribery. Thanks. Check in there. Already psyched for the next forum, insightful interaction. Awesome. Nice opinions and presentation from every speaker. Well done, great discussants and discussions. Thank you. Unfortunately, Gerard was not able, he's been trying to join. He says his internet is pretty poor. But we had Gerard joining us from DR Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. We have Damaris as well joining us from Kenya, and Bright Soul joining us from Ghana, and all these wonderful people. Peter, I want to hear your voice before we go. Peter from Tanzania.
Yeah, I'm here.
You didn't raise your hand. Sorry, it escaped me. So Peter, just share some. Peter is also very loaded when it comes to corruption issues from Tanzania. So probably for our next conversation, we're going to have Peter and a few others. Please join the Voice One Africa group and join the Anti-Corruption Syndicate group, and then we'll plan the next conversation. Peter, yes. So any words you want to share?
All right. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I would like to tell you that today we are just in the anniversary of our late President Magufuli, and we are just reflecting for what he has been fighting. He has been fighting in coming up with new ways of curbing giants in corruption, especially these giants in corruption we talk. These are multinational companies. These are big people. These are Western countries, even sometimes we say Chinese. It was horrible, but he came into to comply with the African Mineral Act and the policies of African Union when it comes to mining. It was not implemented at all. So Magufuli, when he came into power, he just enforced to make sure that Tanzanians and as well as other African countries, they work on the talk. They don't just sit, discuss, and leave things on the table. It's just lie. It looks like you are lying to the next generation that we did this while we didn't really work on that, especially leaders. So he was transparent. He was good at negotiation skills when it comes to vital interest of the country. And he was just even reminding leaders, those who were also in power, that whatever they are doing, they should do for the national interest, for the African interest people. Because if you give the cake of the nation, 70% you give to the imperialists, they'll keep doing such kind of things, which it is going to humiliate the poor people. And those giants in negotiations, they are good at pouring money to the leaders. So I just want to remind my fellow.
You know what?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. So yes, I can hear you. Our next session, we'll have you as part of the panelists so that you can expose on some of these things you're talking about from the Tanzanian perspective, if that's okay with you. We'd like to run up the session. Thank you very much. We have the Pan-African Strategic and Policy. Yeah, Frankie, please go ahead. Just a minute or two, and then we'll be closing. Please go ahead. Pan-African Strategic and Policy.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Kindly introduce yourself, the country which you are speaking from.
My name is Ariola Surura Bello. My name is Ariola Surura Bello, and I'm speaking from Nigeria, Lagos. And I just wanted to chip in that in 2019, we had a conference in partnership with Stellenbosch University from South Africa and a few other organizations on fighting anti-corruption, the African context. The book was actually published and it's on Amazon. And I would really like us to collaborate more. So I've joined the group from the link you shared. You had a wonderful session tonight, and I'll keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and we'll keep engaging. So on this note, would like to bring this wonderful session to a close. And I'd like to say thank you so much for joining and for participating openly. Yeah, so on this note, we say bye-bye. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good night. Bye. Thank you.